gave up a TV job to start a podcast in your basement. If that doesn't scream midlife crisis, I don't know what does.
It was Championship Sunday here in Indianapolis. What's the mindset then coming in as a defending champion?
I want to win. No, I want to win.
The young lady over my shoulder, Caitlin Clark.
Not the best looking guy. And I don't think anyone's going to sit here and say, Matt Randazzo was really good looking.
What has this last month, 2 months, 3 months been like for you? It's an important fan base for the Fighting Illini, isn't it?
It is.
He turned 69 years young last week. He looked good, Coach.
Oh, try it. Thank you.
Welcome to Off the Air on a Tuesday here in the Quad Cities. It is Tuesday, March 4th. Thank you guys so much for joining us. We really do appreciate it. It's a rainy, gross, dreary day in the Quad Cities, so no excuse to do anything but hang out inside and check out a 2-hour Quad City sports show. And that's what we hope you're doing. We want to thank everybody who's watching live on YouTube. If you have not subscribed to our YouTube channel, please do so. We're well over 700 subscribers, looking to inch our way closer to 800 and eventually 1,000 and more. So if you haven't done that, please do so. If you have, make sure you tell a friend or 2 or 10 about YouTube and what we're doing right here in the Quad Cities. Also, we want to thank everyone watching on X right now. Yesterday on X, over 1,000 of you were watching our show, and we really do appreciate that. It's getting better and better, especially with the help of all the different platforms that I'm learning how to hook up to, if that makes any sense, as we go along on this thing. And of course, if you missed any of the shows, you can go back and watch them. But more importantly, you can go back and listen to them as well, because I get it. I don't want to look at myself. I don't blame you. So you can go to all the podcasting platforms, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Podbean, all of those things, and check out all of our shows. As we mentioned yesterday, one of our most watched shows live and also most viewed ever, which we're really excited about that, and for very good reason. The first hour of the show yesterday was the entire Iowa football radio broadcast team with our own good friend Pat Angerer, who's always on Mondays with us, and the legendary Gary Dolphin. Those two were awesome. Go check them out if you missed that. Also, Sherrard standout Rylan Carton joined us. The Tigers winning a championship on the regional side of things last Friday. Rylan scored 45 points, a school record in that, so go check out Rylan's interview as well. And also, we got a little dorky, and we talked some professional wrestling, of course, Elimination Chamber, and John Cena making the big heel turn over the weekend. So Don Umland, referee by night, wrestling fan by weekend, I guess, joined us to talk all about that as well. So check out yesterday's show. Today's show, super excited. We have Central DeWitt head basketball coach Marty Marshall joining us in a matter of moments. Central DeWitt heading to state. They knocked off Assumption last night, so they're heading to the Wells Fargo Arena coming up next week as well. So the girls from Central DeWitt there right now in Des Moines. So we'll talk about that as well. Also coming up, we'll talk Iowa women's basketball with our good friend Kyle Huesmann from the Hawkeye Report. And we'll also talk about the Illini with our Illini expert Jim Mattson from down in Peoria. The Illini back on track basketball-wise, so we're excited about that. We mentioned it was a big night of high school basketball last night. On the girls' side of things during the day on Iowa, Pleasant Valley and North both saw their seasons coming to an end. Coming up on the girls' side this afternoon at 1:30, Central DeWitt plays Norwalk. Macokota plays at 5 o'clock against Dallas Center Grimes. So a big day of girls basketball for some local teams for us in the area as well. Also, Sterling on the Illinois side of things saw their awesome season come to an end. They just lost in overtime to number 1 ranked Washington. A fantastic season for Taylor Jackson and company in Sterling. Jocelyn James, just a sophomore, scored 27 points. The Warriors took the lead in overtime for the first time all evening. Couldn't quite hold on, but they finished a fantastic season. Congratulations to Sterling. We had Taylor Jackson on about a week or 2 ago, so go check out that interview as well. Awesome to get to talk to her as well. A lot of boys action coming up tonight on the Illinois side and Iowa side as well, and that's exactly where we're going to start, because it was a big night for the Central DeWitt Sabres, and I joked with this young man that I have more following, I think, in Central DeWitt and the DeWitt area than ever because of the girls and the guys. Head coach of the Sabres, Marty Marshall, joins us right now, fresh off a a win over Assumption to head to state. First and foremost, Coach, thanks for joining us. Congratulations. And have you slept in the last 24 hours?
No, I have not slept. I mean, it's just an unbelievable experience for our guys and for me. And, this is our second time in 4 years. And the funny thing is, the last time the girls went, we went. So I told the girls coaches, they got to keep going to state so then the boys can keep going to state. So, yeah, nobody's sleeping right now. But it's a good no sleep. You're still playing basketball in March. So,
yeah, Coach, if you lost last night, you probably wouldn't have slept either. So this is a good no sleep for sure. I want to talk about the whole season, but I want to start with last night because it is a rivalry. Central DeWitt, unlike Assumption unlike Central DeWitt, and it's a friendly-ish rivalry, but there's no love loss. To go into that gym and beat that team, what did it mean to you guys? And obviously a game that you guys looked forward to and a great opportunity last night as well.
Yeah, I mean, that's a tough place to play. Assumption's always good every year. And I knew that they would come out and try and, attack us. And they did that. We got on a big lead and they went on a run. But we knew it would be tough. And then, it was a close game up until basically the fourth quarter. They kept battling, we kept battling. And, our defense was just really good last night. We didn't give them any good looks. I mean, everything they got, they had to work for. And, it's a tough environment, but we had tons of fans there. Us going to state means a lot to our community. And, we just wanted to be able to do that for them. And our community really showed up and, couldn't be more proud to be a Sabre today.
Yeah, no, absolutely. With the girls playing today and you guys smiling and celebrating. You talked about that defense, Coach, because in my former life, I'd hop into a gym and get as many offensive highlights as possible. But you and I both know that defense wins championships. And and to allow just 38 points to a roster like that, to the amount of firepower they have, defending state champions, all those kind of things, guys that played at state last year. What does that say about your guys on the defensive end, and how important is that? I know people don't celebrate defense probably like they should, but defense wins championships. You're smiling. The boys played some defense last night, didn't they?
They did. Call me old school. I mean, I still believe defense wins championships. I mean, I hound defense. I told our guys before we started making a tournament run, defense is going to win games. And they really bought into that. And, just being able to have a hand in their shooting pocket, to be able to jump to the ball, rebound, that's all mental toughness. And that's what we preach. And really defense will lead to our offense. I mean, that's how we got some fast break opportunities last night. I know Brady threw it up to Ryan in the fourth quarter for a big dunk, and that was defense that led right to our offense. So yeah, we've been preaching defense all year. I mean, I know we've been giving up like 58 on an average. We've just been outscoring people, but when it's crunch time, our guys really step up, and we told them, don't leave anything in the tank. You don't want to regret it, so don't leave anything in the tank. And I think they took that to heart, and they weren't going to give Assumption anything easy last night.
Marty Marshall, head coach of Central DeWitt, joining us right now on Off the Air with Matt Randazzo. Coach, fourth quarter is closing time. And you mentioned it was close. I want a 39-32, something like that ish going into the fourth quarter, and you guys close and take a close game. I think that's the thing. If you're talking to Assumption today, you're like, the score isn't indicative of how close the game was, because it was a close game throughout. What did that fourth quarter mean for you guys? And you look at a final score of 59-38 and a 21-point victory, you think, wow. But it was a close game. Talk about that fourth quarter and what your guys did in those last 8 minutes that made it a victorious night for the Sabres.
When the third quarter ended, we always talk about 4-minute games and winning those 4-minute games. So you got 4 minutes in the first quarter, or 4 minutes in the first quarter, the first half of it, and then 4 more minutes. So we really talk about that. So we came into that huddle and said, hey, once again, let's go win these first 4 minutes. Let's give it everything we got defensively, And then if we have transition opportunities, let's take them, just like we wanted to all year long. And, our defense got tighter as the game went on, and it just got better. And that's ultimately what led us to being able to push it to that 21 mark, is just having outstanding defense, being able to rebound the ball well, had a few steals that led to transition opportunities. And that's what got it to that point, is just being able to get out and transition. Because when we didn't have anything in transition, what we did was we basically said, let's run our offense and let's get a great shot. But if we have something in transition, we want that layup. And that's what extended that lead for us right off the bat.
Coach, you don't have nearly as many gray hairs as I'm starting to get, but winning a game by 21 points prevents those gray hairs a little bit, maybe a little bit. So it wasn't that crazy finish. Were you able to enjoy the final couple minutes and then, or maybe a couple seconds? And then what was it like as a head coach to watch your boys who have been through a lot of good things happen this year, some good wins. There's been some struggles as well. Did you get to sit back and is that what coaching's all about? To like watch your boys get to celebrate on your rival's court or one of your rival's courts and all those kind of things?
Yeah, I mean, this is what everybody dreams for, right? Being able to win, get to state, and being able to do it against a rival is even sweeter. I really did not until they and us took out our starters with just a little under a minute left to go. I didn't relax. I go, there's enough firepower on that other side that I knew if we didn't continue to play, even with about a minute and a half, 2 minutes, I'm like, I mean, it's not over. I mean, Assumption could put a lot of pressure on us, and and then when they decided, they're going to pull their starters, I pulled mine, and that's when I embraced all those guys that I was pulling out, and gave everyone a hug, all their sweat on me. I mean, that was pretty gross, but that's when I really started to embrace it, and then I kind of sat back and go, we're doing this, and yeah, it's been an up and down season. We've had some injuries this year that since after Christmas break, minus this run the last 2 weeks, we have not had the same guys in the lineup. We have not had the same starters. We've either had people sick or like Brady Meadows went down with a mouth injury and was out for, 8 to 10 games. That takes away our point guard. And then, we held Ryan Waters out of a game because of his ankle. And I said, it's more important to have you in February. Obviously, that paid off for us. So, it was a juggling act all season long. Yeah, ups and downs. Beat a really good Muscatine team. Kind of shorthanded. I mean, we didn't have Brady for that game. And, it was back-to-back nights when we beat them. And, we had some tough losses. And really, when we go back and look at all our losses this year, there was 5 to 6 of them that really could have gone either way during that game. That just speaks volumes of how well the MAC is this year. Really top to bottom. I mean, there was not just we're going to go in there and it'll be an easy game. I mean, every game was a battle. And ultimately, I think that's what prepared us to be able to make this run. I think that's what helped us to be able to go up to Waverly Shell Rock and end up pulling out a victory. And really, we only led in that game the last 3, maybe 4 minutes of that game. But that's all that matters, So I think that's what's prepared us for this run, to be able to go up against competition that most schools don't get to see night in, night out, that we get to see. I think it just made us better for this postseason run.
Coach, I'm glad you're not the only one that could figure out the MAC. And I don't mean that in a weird way, but, it was. I'm watching, I'm looking, and I'm like, well, here's Central DeWitt, and they've beaten Assumption. They got North Scott. They beat Muscatine, but they're still 6-11 in conference. And then, so it was a weird season that way, but it shows the balance of the league. What do you say to your guys during a season like that? Because you got to be proud of them. Today's day and age, and not just today's day and age, our day and age as well, when adversity strikes, as adults, it's tough, more or less young people, and they stuck in there, they hung together. What did you say to them during the season when there were some valleys, and how proud are you of them now, knowing that the peaks are pretty cool going to state next week?
Yeah, so I mean, we kept talking about stay the course, and yeah, I mean, we're playing in a 4A conference, guys. Not many 3A schools get to do that, and I really talked about my first year. I mean, I think we won 15 games in the regular season that year, but I mentioned to them, I brought up our North game that we played this year and that first year, and it was almost identical scores. We lost by, I don't know, 20 some points my first year and this year against them. And then that's when they really started thinking, oh, that team did that, so we can do that. And so it was a struggle at times to make sure they were staying focused and things like that. But, our record against 3A, we only lost one game against a 3A opponent, and that was Assumption right at the end of January. Otherwise, we beaten every 3A team. I pointed that out to them. I mean, look, guys, we're beating 3A teams. We're competing with 4A teams, in a really good conference. The only 2A team that we had was Northeast, and they were in the sub-state in 2A. So it shows you that our non-conference wasn't necessarily a slouch either. I'd point out all those things, point out different scores that are happening. I use Center Point Urbana for an example. We beat them by 15 early in the year. And I go, guys, look at what they're doing over against 3A competition every night. If we were over there, our record would be different. And they really bought into that. And our kids knew what we could do when it came to postseason. And they knew that the teams that we got to face really helped us prepare for that. And yeah, I mean, I'm so proud of these guys. They stayed the course like I asked them to do. And really bought into, getting out and being. I think they were gritty this last week and a half in this. I mean, we went down early against Waverly Shell Rock and we fought back. And not many teams do that, and that speaks volumes to my guys and how well they click as a whole group. I would say this group is constantly doing things together, and not even by me telling them to do it. They just do it. They love being around each other, and they didn't want it to end. And we told them, that's what's going to put us over the top against these teams is if we don't want it to end, we don't let it end. And they bought into that.
Coach, I'm going to pick your brain about the MAC because there's several teams tonight that get an opportunity to go to state, and you look at it because a lot of them are going on the road, and the records aren't always fancy. But we talked about how good a conference it is. Same thing's going to happen to you guys next week. When you go there with a 13-11 record or whatever it is, people aren't going to sit there and go, wow. But you look at the resume, especially recently, and it's pretty impressive. Talk about these teams maybe heading – I don't want to get specific, but maybe just talk about the conference in general, because it's maybe not gotten the respect it deserves, but Assumption won a state championship last year. North Scott's had great success in the past as well. Pleasant Valley. There's some really good basketball on this side of the state that hopefully shows that next week as well.
Yeah, I mean, the MAC's really good. Like I said, top to bottom. I don't, like I said, there's no slouch. And you look at non-conference for even our 4A teams that go and play in the other conferences against 4A teams. I mean, they're competing and they're winning. I think both our teams have a good shot tonight. I know one of them has Cedar Falls, and Cedar Falls is really good. But I think both of them have a shot. I know both those coaches are going to have both their teams prepared for tonight, and I wish them luck. I want to see 3 MAC teams out there. I'd love to see more than that, but I mean, obviously we have a chance to get 3 out there, and it'd be pretty sweet to have 3 MAC teams out there and represent eastern side of Iowa basically for us. Absolutely. So I wish them nothing but the luck, and I think they can compete. So
yeah, absolutely. Marty Marshall joining us. We'll wrap some things up with you with I know it was a sleepless night for you. What'd you tell those kids? And you have to let them enjoy it. That's the one thing I've talked to a lot of coaches about that echo this is that yes, there's more work, but the beauty in Iowa is you don't have to get ready for a game tomorrow. You get that week in between to get ready. Did you encourage the kids to enjoy it and let it sink in, because this is what high school athletics is all about? So yeah, actually we got on the bus and I said, hey, we're going to have film tomorrow right after school.
And they're like, no, we're not. I go, no, we're not. So today they have off. And that was kind of the plan. They're going to have today off, be able to go watch the girls, support the girls. I bet every single one of my guys are probably out there watching the girls today, which is good. Our girls program and our boys program work really well together, always supporting each other. After they won, obviously I was at their game. I congratulate every single one of those guys. As soon as we won, they're out at Des Moines already, so they weren't able to come watch our game, but they were watching it online. And as soon as that game was over, all 4 of their coaches were texting me, congratulating me. So that's pretty sweet to have the support from the girls and the boys giving the support to the girls. So you don't get that necessarily in every school. And we take pride in that, being able to support one another. We'll have today off. Continue to enjoy it. I'm not watching any film today, which is weird for me because I like watching film and being able to prepare. Tomorrow I'll start watching film, preparing. We'll have a lighter practice tomorrow, and then by Friday we'll be putting in a game plan to go into Monday. And I'm hoping the girls really screw up my practice plans, and I got to move some practices around because after they win today, they'll play Thursday, and I'll have to figure out when I'm practicing so our boys can still go out there and watch them. So hopefully they do that for me because I love that headache because then they're still playing. So
absolutely. One more before I let you go. Marty Marshall, Central DeWitt, sleepless head coach right now, joining us on Off the Air. That community's got to be going crazy right now. I know the community. It's a fantastic community. I know how excited they were for the girls. And 2 very similar stories because while the girls had some expectations, and you guys did too, everybody talked about the other schools and they were kind of slept on a little bit, and you guys may be the same. What's that community like right now, and what makes it so special? Because they bleed purple and gold, and they love what they do, and they love their Sabres. What makes that community so special for yourself and for your program?
Like you just said, this community is awesome. This community has supported it no matter what our records are in a year. It's a tight community. Everybody knows everybody, and they're going to support anything and everything. Sports, band, whatever it may be. It's tight. Watching the environment at the girls' game and then turning around and watching the environment at our game. I just sat there and looked up just a little bit, just before the game started, just to see all our fans. And it's amazing how many people after the game, my phone was blowing up, just the congratulations and how special this is. It's not very many programs have boys and girls going out. It doesn't happen very often, and we're one of those communities that can say it happened 2 times in 4 years. So that's awesome. There'll be a big turnout for the girls' game today from our community, and when we go out there Monday, there'll be a big crowd for our community as well. They bleed the purple and gold, and support thick and thin. So couldn't be prouder to be part of this community, and look forward to having them out at the girls' game and our game on Monday.
Well, I'm sure you got a million text messages yesterday. Thank you for returning mine and saying, okay, I'm going to go sleepless on some show. Some goofball started in his loft for no reason, but I appreciate you doing it. Also, and I didn't do my homework, and you probably did. Is there brackets out for 3A yet?
Yeah, there's brackets out. So we play Clear Lake first round on Monday at 5:30. They're the number 1 seed. We're the number 8. I knew we'd be the number 8 if we got there. They got a big kid. I believe he's signed to go to play football at Iowa. So he's 6'6". I'm guessing he's probably pretty thick. I haven't watched any film on him yet, so I really have no idea how good they are. I'm assuming pretty good considering they're 24-0. But we'll try and come up with a game plan to try and beat them.
Yeah, the last 2 opponents that you had were pretty good as well, and you took care of them. So keep being.
Yeah,
go ahead.
Waverly Shellrock was runner-up last year, and Assumption was state champ. So we went through 2 really good teams, and our guys are high on themselves, and they think they can do it. So
That's the important thing. Keep being David, knocking off Goliath. Have a great week next week, Coach, and hopefully we talk to you again really, really soon. I appreciate you taking the time to do it. Go get a nap. It's okay. It's rainy, all that kind of stuff. Go get a nap. You probably deserve one.
Perfect. Thanks, Matt.
All right. He is Marty Marshall, the head coach of the Central DeWitt boys basketball program. They are heading to state. The girls are at state right now. They take the floor. Ron O'Brien and company take the floor at 1:30 against Norwalk. And then coming up at 5 o'clock, it's Makokata versus Dallas Center Grimes. So a fun way to start our show off, and really appreciative of Marty of taking the time to do that. Of course, a lot of things going on. So we wanted to get Marty in here as fast as we possibly could. Well, we are just getting warmed up on a gloomy, soggy Tuesday here in the Quad Cities. Coming up after the break, we're going to talk some Iowa women's basketball. The women's tournament tips off tomorrow in Indianapolis. That's where Iowa will be. They'll take on Wisconsin for the second straight game. They knocked them off over the weekend as well. They beat them 30 straight times. So we'll talk about that and much more with Kyle Huesmann. Also, Jim Mattson still coming up later on to talk about the Illini and a lot more. We got a jam-packed show for you. It's Tuesday off the air with Matt Randazzo. We will be right back right after this.
Hello, Dan Pearson here of FCA. Our team is thrilled to support Off the Air with our good friend Matt Randazzo. We share the view of the power of sport when it comes to relationships, including the influence of the coach. FCA believes the coach is the most influential person in America. Matt celebrates local coaches and athletes. His content is informational, insightful, and inspirational. Our Fellowship of Christian Athlete team loves partnering with Off the Air with Matt Randazzo while we engage, equip, and empower coaches and athletes in our 23 counties. FCA, the heart and soul in sports.
View from the West, the podcast covering Illinois high school football.
It's going to be a hard-hitting game. It's going to be great football.
Weekly analysis and reaction from around the western side of the state of Illinois.
This is the game we had circled when the year started.
Follow along on YouTube and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts.
It's big-time football out there tonight, and I know we can play big-time football.
View from the West. We got you covered.
Are you looking for the Quad City's best chips and salsa? There's only one dude to turn to.
Right on.
Snoop. Hand-cut chips, fried fresh with that crunch you've come to love. And the most addicting salsa with delicious fresh ingredients each and every time. Pick up your chips and salsa, queso, enchiladas, and much more at the Stern Center in Rock Island. To place your order, simply call the man himself. It's Snoop at 309-314-8197 and find out for yourself what the rest of the Quad Cities already loves. Welcome back to Off the Air with Matt Randazzo. It's a soggy Tuesday here in the Quad Cities, but there's always basketball to dry us off and warm us up, and it's a big week for the ladies because in the Big Ten, they all head to Indianapolis, and we bring in one of our Hawkeye experts, the Hawkeye Report's Kyle Huesmann. First and foremost, Kyle, thanks for doing this again. I know it's a busy time with you and baseball going and basketball for the ladies going. Have you thought about asking Tom Kakert for a raise? Because I feel you desperately deserve one.
He says this time of year is like when football and men's basketball overlaps. So he's got that time in the fall, and then this is kind of my time where baseball and women's basketball overlap. But you got a lot of stuff to balance at this time with when games are and things like that. But it's kind of fun though.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it's a fun time for the Iowa women. They've been playing fantastic. 2 losses in the last month maybe, and they were 2 really good games and close losses to 2 really good teams. Let's start with this past weekend and senior day at Carver Hawkeye Arena. They get that 20th victory, but besides the win, just talk about that arena and another special group of seniors. Was it Caitlin and Kate and Gabby? No, but these young ladies have won a lot of basketball at the University of Iowa, and then somebody like Lucy fit right in great. It's a special group of seniors once again.
Oh yeah, I mean for sure. I mean this group was a little bit different. You know, they didn't have kind of some of the you know, like you said, the Kate and the Caitlin and the Gabby, and even like a Molly Davis and a Sharon Goodman. What kind of that class was known for was getting to back-to-back Final Fours. But I mean, this year's senior class was a big part of those 2 years as well. But Jan Jensen talked about it a lot. The thing about this senior class that was so special to her was that they all decided to stick around. You know, Lucy Olson, like Lucy, who had a number of programs that were reaching out to her in the portal. You know, she could have decommitted and went somewhere else. So for her to stay, you know, just weeks after she had committed to Iowa to stay through that. And then any of the other seniors, you know, Kylie Fierbach, Sita Fulter, AJ Ediger, you know, Addie O'Grady, any of them could have left. You know, right when Lisa announces her retirement, there's that period of time where any player can enter the portal from Iowa. So Jan was just grateful that they all decided to stick around, knowing that you know, they all had varying roles. You know, Lucy's obviously been the scorer. Sita Fulter's had a pretty big role. Kylie Fierbach's had a big role, but Addie O'Grady is someone that started at the beginning of the year and has had a different role. And AJ Ediger has been someone that's never really gotten the moment on the court, but has been a great teammate throughout her time. Done a lot of things off the court and in the community. But I think the big thing about this class that they'll be remembered for, especially by Jan Jensen, that she'll remember for them for is that first class that stuck around with her and decided to stick with her when they could have went anywhere else and played for another program.
So, Kyle, let's get to the game itself this past weekend. Beating Wisconsin, a workmanlike performance, a nice victory to end the season, gets to 20 victories on the year. And, boy, that's a Wisconsin team, a Wisconsin program that hasn't found any luck against the University of Iowa. It's been a long, long time since the Badgers have beaten the Hawkeyes, hasn't it?
Yeah, since 2007, Iowa's now won 30 in a row in the series, which you start to think about, you know, two Big Ten teams facing off. That's pretty impressive to have that level of dominance, to win 30 in a row over, you know, that's going on, 18, 19 years now. Yeah, it's pretty impressive. And a lot of those wins recently have been wins that Iowa's had, you know, wrapped up at halftime, you know, 15, 20-point lead at halftime. And to Wisconsin's credit, the other day, they kept it close and it was tied at halftime. A Wisconsin team that's got some offensive firepower. I think some people just see the record and assume that they're not that good. But yeah, I've been telling some people, you know, the year that Wisconsin's going to find themselves in a close game all of a sudden, you know, maybe a couple minutes left in the fourth quarter, they're going to start. That's going to be one that's going to be scary because they're going to really want to finish that or end that losing streak. But yeah, to have 30 in a row and now a chance to make it 31 on Wednesday. Yeah, that's pretty impressive when you talk about two teams in the same conference. It just doesn't happen. That's kind of on the level of like a Gonzaga men's basketball. I know they have some pretty lengthy winning streaks going against some of those teams out in the West Coast Conference. But yeah, 30 in a row is pretty impressive.
Well, hopefully it will be 31 straight victories coming up on Wednesday. We'll talk about that in a second. But take me through this first season for Jan Jensen at the University of Iowa and everything she had to go through and losing the talent she lost and having to step into those shoes and have a 5-game losing streak during the season to get to 20 victories. I just think she's done a great job. She's not going to be the coach of the year later today or later this morning, but your thoughts on her first season at the helm of the University of Iowa?
Yeah, I think all of us kind of underestimated, even myself, and I'm someone that's around the program, you know, a lot during the season and even in the off season. I think we all underestimated just kind of the circumstances that Jan was coming into. I mean, you look at the players that they were losing with Caitlin leaving and Kate leaving and Gabby Marshall leaving, and even someone like a Molly Davis and a Sharon Goodman who got playing time last year throughout the season. And then Lisa Bluter retires and Jan goes from an associate head coach to head coach. You know, Jenny Fitzgerald, who was on the coaching staff for a very long time, is kind of the lead scout, retires as well. Then you talk about bringing in Lucy Olson, a transfer that became kind of the new leading scorer for the team, and how it took her a while to kind of gel with the team. And you throw in the Hannah Stolke not getting to practice for most of the offseason with the knee surgery that she got. And then Sita Fulter gets knee surgery right before the season. A lot of stuff happened in the offseason. But to have that losing streak and for a first-year head coach who's going through all the things of, you know, having to manage, you know, substitutions and managing all the stuff that, they hadn't the Jan Jensen had a big input in when she was an associate head coach, but now she's the one making that final decision. She's learning as the season goes on, and for them to be able to navigate through that losing streak and then turn around and go on a 6-game winning streak, to go from being on the end to solidly in, and what we're talking about now is a potential 6th seed in the NCAA tournament. But I think I had 22-7. I mean, there are a couple of buzzer beaters that all away from being that record.
Well, Kyle, let's talk about what is to come. We talked about those Badgers and 30 straight victories for the Iowa Hawkeyes against Wisconsin. I'm a gambler. I'm a sports gambler. I'm a law of averages type of guy. Wisconsin's due, and they get another crack at the Hawkeyes on Wednesday. It's always hard to beat a team twice in 5 days or whatever they say, but it's also hard to beat a team 30 straight times. Wisconsin will be ready. I feel like this Iowa team will be ready as well. Your thoughts on the rematch coming up on Wednesday?
Yeah, I mean, you're right that Wisconsin is due. I mean, 30 games in a row over however many years it's been since 2007. The big thing about that time frame is that the programs have just kind of been in different places. Wisconsin hasn't made the NCAA tournament since 2010. Marissa Mosley, to her credit, and I believe her 4th season, she got the Badgers to the WNIT last year, and won a couple of games, which was huge for the program. But Iowa just obviously in a different place, making a couple of national titles. Obviously, even before that, you talk back to Megan Gustafson and those times. At least the Blue Jays had the program in a really good position, which has certainly helped when that matchup has come around on the schedule. But I've always said that the day it happens, it's going to be an upset. It would have been an upset if Wisconsin had pulled it out on Sunday. It'd be an upset if Wisconsin did it tomorrow. And we both know in sports, and especially college sports, upsets seem to happen on any day. But specifically for tomorrow's matchup, I think the difference is that you look at how that game went on Sunday. Iowa made some defensive adjustments at halftime, and they were able to take control of the game. And Jan Jensen talked about some of those adjustments at halftime that they made that they felt like were going to give them a chance to pull away or at least take control of the game. She also mentioned that senior day brings some emotions that you just don't have for other games. And sometimes, when those seniors are playing a big role in the game, it can affect you a little bit early in the game, at least. So I think the big thing for Iowa is that they can go back and watch the film and say, here's some areas that we feel like we didn't play well in, both offensively and defensively, and make some adjustments for Wednesday. Whereas on Wisconsin's side, I thought they played a pretty good game, especially in the first half. They made shots. As I said, they've got some offensive talent. That interior duo of Sarah Williams and Carter McRae combined for 35 points and 20 rebounds. And they've got Tess Myers, who's a really good 3-point shooter. They've got a couple other shooters around her. But you look at how Wisconsin played, and you say, yeah, you can make some adjustments. But Wisconsin's not a good defensive team, and they haven't been at all season. So as much as they can try to make adjustments with how they defend, they're just not a great defensive team. That's just where they're at. They've played a full season of not being a good defensive team. They're not all of a sudden going to become a good defensive team on Wednesday. For them, it boils down to they've just got to make more shots. Tess Myers, instead of making 4 threes, is going to have to make 6 threes. And Lily Cron, instead of 1 3, is going to have to make 3 or 4 threes. That's just how it is for Wisconsin. And you start to wonder when you say, Iowa can make adjustments, and they did make adjustments, especially in the second half of that game. Held Wisconsin to like 33% shooting in the second half. You look at what Iowa was able to do in the second half, and you say, can Wisconsin play that much better than they already played on Sunday to have a chance against Iowa? And you mentioned how Iowa's been playing lately. It seems like it's a pretty tall task for Wisconsin to pull the upset. But yeah, you play a team a couple times in a couple of days. It is tough. And I expect Wisconsin to come out and maybe have a little bit of extra confidence from what they did in the first half of that game on Sunday. But yeah, I think Iowa will make their fair share of adjustments, and I still like them to be a pretty sizable favorite on Wednesday.
And it says a lot for the conference, Kyle, because, boy, 20 wins and 10-8 in this league, you think you'd probably not be playing on a Wednesday, and you are because of what the league's like. And we've talked about it before, but this team is a couple bounces away from not playing on Wednesday, playing on Thursday, and maybe having, and I'm not saying they don't have a chance to win it with what it is, but 5 games in 5 days in this league is going to be a daunting task. But it was really close to being different. And I think Iowa knows that, and they have a lot of confidence coming in to a Wednesday and a Thursday, hopefully, game, and more after that, because they know how close they've been throughout the season.
Yeah, I think that's really the thing that they'll not only carry into the Big Ten tournament, but the NCAA tournament, knowing that the 11th seed in the Big Ten tournament is not doesn't paint the picture of how their season went, or doesn't paint the picture of how good they are as a team. So certainly, they go into Wisconsin on Wednesday, looking to take care of business there. But that sixth seed is Michigan State, a team that they led by 9 in East Lansing and let that slip away. So they know, Michigan State being the sixth seed, that's a difference of 5 seeds in the tournament. But Iowa knows how close they were to beating Michigan State and to some of those other teams in the conference. There was a huge pack of teams there at 7-8 losses in Iowa. Some of those close losses were to that group of teams, and is why they fell down the seed lines a bit. But yeah, Iowa's playing with a lot of confidence right now. They know that they can beat anybody in the Big Ten and certainly compete with anybody in the Big Ten. It'll be interesting to see how they go about this week, just because it is a daunting task to try to go 5 games in 5 days, and certainly not something that they have to do. We're not talking about they need to win the Big Ten tournament to get into the NCAA tournament. But I think the big thing for this week is first go out, beat Wisconsin, and then I think a win over Michigan State locks up a 6th seed in the NCAA tournament. And anything after that, you play Ohio State after that. That's just trying to keep the momentum, in a good spot going into the NCAA tournament, because right now they do have a lot of momentum. But that momentum doesn't matter if you don't carry it over into the NCAA tournament, where that's where the goals are for the season, is to try to make a run in the NCAA tournament. But certainly I think the momentum that Iowa has is enough to win a couple of games at the Big Ten tournament, whether it's over a Michigan State and you lose to an Ohio State, or maybe you pull an upset against Ohio State. But I think the big goal this week is trying to put together stack a couple more good performances, so that way when you go into the NCAA tournament, where you are going to be traveling to a regional host site, you feel like you're in a good spot, kind of that same spot that they've been in here recently. And they feel good about trying to go pull an upset potentially in the second round of the NCAA tournament if they can make it there.
Yeah, Kyle, I'm a father of 4, so here comes a weird analogy that might make sense when I get it all out. But they all play travel baseball. So my wife just this past weekend put every game and practice into a calendar. And she gets mad at me because I don't look at the calendar, because I get anxiety at what's to come and the path of the next 3 months of craziness. I feel like that's the way the Iowa Hawkeyes have to play this one. If you sat there and wrote it down and said, got to play on Wednesday, got to play Michigan State probably on Thursday, got to play a really good Ohio State game on Friday, probably UCLA on Saturday, to get USC on Sunday, I think if you look at all that, the anxiety comes. Don't you have to, not just as players, but as fans, just kind of take this one game at a time? Because if you look at the whole enchilada, it's a daunting task in the Big Ten.
Yeah, and I think they've done a good job of that. You look back to that losing streak earlier in the year. At the tail end of that losing streak, when they lost that 5th game in a row to Oregon, we were talking about, is the NCAA tournament possible at this point? You started talking about, they've got to go to Washington, they've got to go to Nebraska, they've got to go to Minnesota, they've got to go to Michigan. And you talked about, Ohio State too, and then USC was at home and UCLA was at home. That was kind of similar to what they have here, where it was like, man, this is a lot of road games, this is a lot of tough games. But at that moment, they had to take it game by game. They'd say, okay, our next game is at Washington. Forget about being on the bubble. Forget about all the road games. We got to go beat Washington to end this losing streak, and they did that. And then you come home and it's, okay, we got to beat Northwestern. This is a team at the bottom of the conference, got to handle business there. They did that. Then it was, okay, now we're playing the USC Trojans at home. Now we can focus on trying to pull that upset. And they did it. And now it's kind of turned into what we've said now, is that 8 out of the last 10 that they've won. I think they've done a really good job of breaking it up. And just looking, and Jan Jensen is someone that does that. She's a proponent of taking it just day by day, game by game, practice by practice. And that's what they have to do this week is, you don't worry, like you said, you don't worry about Ohio State and you don't worry about Michigan State. You worry about Wisconsin because you just were at halftime with them tied at halftime the other day. So that they do pose some challenges. So you got to worry about Wisconsin on Wednesday. And then when you get done, and that's a late tip too, when you get done, it's not even going to be worrying about Michigan State. It's going to be worried about getting to bed, getting up in the next morning and just starting to prepare for that next game. And then it will be Michigan State, and just taking it one step at a time. 5 games in 5 days, especially with some of those opponents that would come up on the schedule, unless there's some pretty big upsets. Yeah, I mean, it is very daunting. I personally don't think that they have the weapons to do it. I don't think anyone in the conference has the weapons to do it that could have been in that situation. Obviously, UCLA could have won 5 games in 5 days, or USC. But anyone that could have been in this situation or is in this situation, you talk about like a Nebraska or a Minnesota or a Washington, I don't think any of them have the weapons to do it. It's just the way that it is and how tough it is to do it. But yeah, for Iowa, there is still stuff to play for, even if they don't win the conference tournament. There's still seed lines in the NCAA tournament to play for, and like I said, there's keeping that momentum. So you have to go out and you have to start by beating Wisconsin on Wednesday. You can't beat Michigan Michigan State on Thursday, or you can't beat Ohio State on Friday if you don't beat Minnesota on Wednesday. So to your point, yeah, you take it one day at a time, and you worry about the next game when you get there.
You know, you mentioned earlier and kind of alluded to it already that and they're going there to win. And you know, if you ask any one of those players, they want to win the whole thing and win another Big Ten tournament championship and all that kind of stuff. But boy, if you're an Iowa fan, you remember back on the boys' side of things, the men's side of things a few years ago, and they have a great run in the Big Ten tournament. They win the Big Ten tournament. They got a ton of momentum. They head to Buffalo, and all of a sudden they get like a Thursday game, which is early after playing all those games up until Sunday night. And then, you know, it's a sleepy Thursday morning game, and we all know what happened. Iowa loses, and they go home early. And like I said, they want to go win. So how do you balance that? Because I know they're going there to win, and they want to stay there as long as they can. But as we've kind of alluded to, it's not the worst thing in the world if they go there, win 2 or 3 games, and then go home. But they do get the week in between, I guess.
Yeah, that's the big thing with the men's tournament being there the next week is you do get that week off to rest and recover, which they've had the last few years. And now I haven't talked to Jan Jensen about it because she hasn't been the head coach, but Lisa Bluder always talked about it is kind of a weird, you know, for a little bit, you know, if you play a couple of games and, you know, if I was able to beat a Wisconsin and then beat Michigan State, and, you know, even if they lose to an Ohio State or if they beat an Ohio State, that's still 3 games in 3 days or 4 games in 4 days. That's a lot of basketball to play. And there's going to be certain players that are a little banged up, you know, maybe not hurt, but again, banged up where you want some of that rest. And that week off does help. But we've also, you know, you also worry about this isn't going to be the same NCAA tournament where I was playing a 16 seed or they're playing a 15 seed in the first round. If I was a 6 seed, they're going to be playing an 11 seed that could be like a Columbia, who's a very good mid-major, or a UNLV, who's a very good mid-major. And maybe that week off, that little bit of rust that you accumulate over a week off, it's not like a 15 or 16 seed where you can be rusty in the first half and going, oh, you know, we're up 15 and a half. Yeah. You know, we didn't really play that great. We're a little rusty. You can't be a little rusty when you're playing Columbia or UNLV or whoever that 11 seed might be, because you might be losing at halftime then. So, yeah, I think, you know, I guess I'm probably going a little bit away from what your point was. But I do think that week off will be interesting to see how Iowa handles it, just because they won't have, you know, maybe the same I don't know what the word would be. They don't get the same, you know, fortunes of being able to have a bad half against a 16 seed. It's going to be a good team. Yeah. So I think, you know, there's a balance of, you know, like I said, you want to go win. You don't want to, you know, burn yourself out in this tournament trying to do more than you need to. But they do have that week off. But I think the bigger thing, if you can go win a few games in a few days and make a good run, great, because you do have that week off. But my worry would more be, does that week off affect them a little bit more? Is there a little bit of rust that they have to knock off in that first round of the NCAA tournament? They're not going to be at home. They're not going to have that home crowd to get behind them if they you know, they have a tough start to a game. So that would be my worry, more than being a little or more than being tired and having that week off to rest. My worry would be that do you have too long to be off?
Sure.
So that'll be something that will get talked about. I'm curious to hear the coaching staff and some players' thoughts about that when we get to talk to them in a week on Selection Sunday, or well, 2 weeks actually until Selection Sunday. But that would be my worry more, would be that you aren't going to get the same, you know, fortunate, oh, we're playing a 16 seed, we can have a little bit of a rusty start. It's going to be different this year in a different environment against a much better first-round opponent this year.
Yeah, a couple more for Kyle Huesmann from the Hawkeye Report. Kyle, is it as simple enough to say if they beat Wisconsin and then they lose, they're a 7 seed? If they beat Wisconsin and beat Ohio State, they're a 6 seed? And then what would they have to do? Is even a 5 seed in the conversation unless they win the whole thing? Or kind of how do you bracket out and how do you maybe see it?
Yeah, I would say, you know, you lose to Wisconsin, you'd be a 7 seed. You beat Wisconsin, you lose to Michigan State is where you start thinking about, you know, what do the other teams around you do? Michigan is currently projected as a 7 seed per ESPN. Again, this is not the selection committee. They don't put out, daily bracket projections. But ESPN has Michigan as a 7 seed. Right now, Iowa would be favored over Michigan to get the 6 seed because they just won at Michigan on the road. But if Iowa loses to Michigan State in that second round, and Michigan, they beat a Minnesota or Washington in their first game, whoever that is, and then they go beat Maryland in the quarterfinals, all of a sudden Michigan picked up a couple of decent wins, or Utah and Oklahoma State who are projected 7 seeds right now. They're supposed to play each other at the Big 12 tournament. If Utah wins their first game, they will play Oklahoma State. So one of them is going to get a solid win at the Big 12 tournament. So I think if you beat Washington or Wisconsin, you'll be in the conversation whether you lose to Michigan State or beat them. But I think if you lose, it'll be one of those, hey, what did those teams that are right behind you do? And Michigan State is a projected 6 seed as well, so Iowa could get a win there. I think a win over Michigan State locks it up. They'll be a 6 seed if they get that. I think if they lose, it's going to come down to what happens around them. And then you asked about the 5 seed. I think there's a decent gap between the 6 and the 5. I don't know that a win over Ohio State would get them to a 5 seed. I think that would, in a lot of ways, that win over Ohio State wouldn't, outside of being a big win and an upset for their NCAA tournament seeding, I don't know that it would mean a whole lot. The difference between losing to Ohio State and then beating them, I think you'd have to beat a UCLA to get up to the 5 seed. Win the whole tournament, they'd be 25-9. That would certainly, I think that'd be 4 quad 1 wins on the way to the championship, which would certainly, they'd throw their hat in the ring for a host at that point. They wouldn't get it. Then you would be pretty frustrated with a couple of those losses that happened in the middle of the season. But that's how I would break it down. I'd say a win over Wisconsin and a loss to Michigan State, you're right there. You wouldn't be able to argue either way. If you got a 7 seed, you wouldn't be able to argue it, and no one would be able to argue if I was a 6 seed if they got it in that situation. You beat Michigan State, I would say 99% sure they'd be locked up at a 6 seed there. A 5 seed would probably take a couple more wins to get there.
Kyle, the last couple of years, and obviously Caitlin Clark has a lot to do with this, but where Iowa went, Iowa fans followed. And, I mean, you remember the NCAA tournaments and the Big Ten tournaments, I should say. It was Carver Hawkeye on the road. And the fans have been fantastic again this year. How much does it translate this year? And maybe the better teams, the UCLAs, the USCs, it's a tough trip for some of those fans as well. I guess the question is how much black and gold do we expect? Can we expect coming up this week in Indianapolis?
Oh, I mean, the Indianapolis location is good for a lot of Big Ten teams. It'll be really good for Indiana. I know I saw a couple comments from Indiana's head coach Terry Moore, and she's happy that they're going to be just I don't even know what it is, less than an hour from Bloomington. So I know she's really happy that their fans will be able to travel. But Iowa fans travel really well. They traveled to Minneapolis really well, and I know there's a lot of Iowa fans up in Minnesota anyway. But Indianapolis is not that far away either. So I expect I don't know about the Wisconsin game. I think there'll be a few people that'll say, hey, we're going to take the chances. I think they'll beat Wisconsin. Maybe we'll get ready to go for the Michigan State game. But that Michigan State game will have a good group of Iowa fans if they get there. And then if Iowa beats Michigan State, it'll continue to grow as the week goes on if Iowa can continue to keep getting wins. But I'm sure, Illinois, Indiana, I'm sure there's their fair share of Iowa fans there, and Iowa fans will travel from Iowa anyway. But yeah, and then you move on to the NCAA tournament. It'll be different because, we've gotten used to Iowa hosting for a couple of games. So we're used to sold out Carver Hawkeye Arena. There's a couple locations. I think Lexington, if they were to go to Kentucky, I think would get some Iowa fans, but anything else, it'd be an interesting trip. But if they can get past that, if they could make a Sweet 16, there'd be fans at either Birmingham or Spokane. But yeah, I would not be shocked to see a large group of Iowa fans in Indianapolis this week.
All right, Kyle, let's put your money where your mouth is, and I'll take Iowa out of the equation for you so you don't have to pick the Hawks. But who wins? I mean, you look at this Big Ten tournament, what is it? USC has beat UCLA twice, but they're the best two teams. Ohio State is kind of hovering around right after that. A bunch of good teams after that. Who do you see leaving Indianapolis as the Big Ten tournament champions?
Yeah, I just talked about this with Tom on the podcast yesterday. I'm going to go with the boring pick. I think it's going to be UCLA USC in the conference championship game. I think there's going to be some surprising results. maybe not necessarily giant upsets just because of how packed in that middle group of the Big Ten is. But I think there's going to be a couple of surprises that maybe you wouldn't have picked a certain team over another that are going to happen. And the, kind of those middle of the pack games, Iowa over a Michigan State and then over an Ohio State would be something that I think is something similar to that could happen. Not going to say that is what happens, but I think once you get to that final game on Sunday, I think it's going to be UCLA, USC. Those two are just, to me, head and shoulders above everybody else. I mean, Ohio State got third, as you mentioned, kind of hovering there as that third team. So is Maryland. They both had 4 losses in conference play. So they both had 4. UCLA ends up with 2, both to USC, and USC just ends up with the 1 loss to Iowa. So I think those two are head and shoulders above the other. And obviously they get the advantage of the double bye, so they're going to be, playing a couple games less, at least a game less than the team that they'll be playing at the first time. And that championship game, I know it's tough. We just talked about beating the team several times. I'm going to go with USC. I thought UCLA was going to win at Pauley Pavilion there in the regular season finale and get the Big Ten regular season title. That game wasn't that close. USC dealt with a lot of foul trouble in that game and dealt with it well. And Juju Watkins put up like 25 in the first half or something. Was incredible. And there's nothing that I've seen in those 2 games of USC and UCLA that leads me to say that UCLA is going to win a third matchup. It'd be hard. It'd be very hard for USC to go 3 for 3 against UCLA. But right now, based on what I've seen, that would be my pick right now. It'd be USC to run through and get the Big Ten title in their first season in the Big Ten. But I do think it's going to be it's either going to be USC or UCLA, which will end Iowa's 3-year streak of winning the Big Ten tournament.
No, it would be, but you never know what happens in Indianapolis. And you mentioned, crazy things happening in college basketball. It's March now. So as we both know, things happen crazy in March, in March Madness as well. And Kyle, I wish everybody watching this knew what we went through to get this on for the people who watch Off the Air with Matt Randazzo. You deserve – Tom wouldn't have put up with it. We had some internet stuff and everything. Tom would have quit, yelled at me, been mean, all that kind of stuff. But you, the professional that you are, put up with Dazzo and his internet and maybe your internet and who knows, and we got it done. If people want to continue to keep following not just the Iowa women, but the Iowa baseball team as well and all that kind of stuff, let people know how to get your coverage of Hawkeye athletics.
Yeah, on Twitter is kind of where I post a lot of my stuff. At Huesmann Kyle on Twitter, that's HUESMANN, 2 N's on there, and then Kyle on Twitter, and then obviously Hawkeye Report, our site with On3, is where all the articles, all the podcasts, all the stuff goes there. For me, I women's basketball obviously at the Big Ten tournament, then the NCAA tournament. Baseball season's really just kind of getting underway. They just won the other day against Loras. A midweek game for their home opener, so that was fun to get out there, and mid-50s temperatures was nice there. And then other than me, Tanner's doing a great job with wrestling. They're getting into the postseason with the Big Ten championships and then the NCAA championships, and obviously Tom with men's basketball, and spring football starts soon. So we're getting into that time where there's a lot of overlap. Actually, we're not getting into it. We are in the time where there's a lot of overlapping amongst several sports. So. Always a lot to read over on our site.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And not putting cart ahead of horse, but it'll be an interesting couple weeks for Tom and the men's basketball team as well, depending on what happens this week, against Michigan State and then, of course, against Nebraska this weekend. But coaching searches sometimes are good for business. I hope they're good for my viewership as well. So we'll see what happens. But I'm not saying if it is, but if it does, either way, the University of Iowa goes with the men's basketball program is going to be talked about, and that's what we love. So he's Kyle Huesmann, the good-looking part of the Hawkeye Report, bringing up it's a low bar. It's a low bar, Kyle, so don't get too excited. It's a low bar that Tom sets, but we always appreciate you, and we will talk to you again real soon.
Yeah, thank you for having me on.
All right, that is Kyle Huesmann. The Iowa women take the court, as Kyle said, in the Big Ten tournament on Wednesday evening against Wisconsin. We got much more to get to. You're watching Off the Air on a soggy Tuesday here in the Quad Cities.
Hello, Dan Pearson here of FCA. Our team is thrilled to support Off the Air with our good friend Matt Randazzo. We share the view of the power of sport when it comes to relationships. including the influence of the coach. FCA believes the coach is the most influential person in America. Matt celebrates local coaches and athletes. His content is informational, insightful, and inspirational. Our Fellowship of Christian Athlete team loves partnering with Off the Air with Matt Randazzo while we engage, equip, and empower coaches and athletes in our 23 counties. FCA, the heart and soul in sports.
View from the West, the podcast covering Illinois high school football.
It's going to be a hard-hitting game. It's going to be great football.
Weekly analysis and reaction from around the western side of the state of Illinois.
This is the game we had circled when the year started.
Follow along on YouTube and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts.
It's big-time football out there tonight, and I know we can play big-time football.
View from the West. We got you covered.
Are you looking for the Quad City's best chips and salsa? There's only one dude to turn to.
Right on.
Snoop. Hand-cut chips, fried fresh with that crunch you've come to love. And the most addicting salsa with delicious fresh ingredients each and every time. Pick up your chips and salsa, queso, enchiladas, and much more at the Stern Center in Rock Island. To place your order, simply call the man himself. It's Snoop at 309-314-8197 and find out for yourself what the rest of the Quad Cities already loves. Welcome back to Off the Air on a Tuesday here in the Quad Cities, a cloudy, dreary, soggy Tuesday here in the Quad Cities, but there's always sunshine when we see our good friend Jim Mattson. Jim, it's yuck up here. Is it yuck down there in the Peoria area as well?
Yeah, I just took the dog outside for a quick, very quick trip outside. So very cold, cold, wet rain. The worst kind of rain, but it's March.
It's not snow, so I guess that's the good
right.
thing of it.
We're not shoveling. Yeah.
And I know you're busy this time of year. High school-wise is crazy. I'm going to talk to you about that in just a second because one of your teams plays one of our teams tonight in a big game. But I want to start with the Illini like we normally do with you. And Jim, it wasn't more than 2 weeks ago that Illinois was losing by the worst defeat in school history. They were hanging banners upside down. The end of the world was coming. You go beat Michigan and Iowa by 20. Suddenly things aren't as bad. It's crazy in college basketball how quickly things can change.
It really is. I mean, it's the fluctuations. Even like with the, I remember the last time we talked, we were like, well, boy, Illinois kind of struck out in the transfer portal because Kylan Boswell hasn't lived up to expectations, and Trey White hasn't lived up to expectations, and Ben Humrickhouse. All three of those guys had a great week. I mean, Boswell was unbelievable, and Trey White's back with double-doubles, and Humrickhouse is coming off the bench making shots, and suddenly Illinois is a winner in the transfer portal. They're a dangerous team. It is. I think the last time we talked, I said, the margin is scary, but losing at Duke, to Duke in New York, losing at Wisconsin was not that scary a thought, but the way they were losing was a little bit frustrating. But I think the one thing that's kind of exciting is that, they are getting healthier. If they get Morez back, they're even going to get healthier. But they seem like they have found a little different style. And, a good time to be playing well. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, I want to talk to you about Michigan specifically in a second. But you have the pulse or the heartbeat of Illini fans. What's it been like since Michigan, maybe Monday on your show, on your radio show? It's one of those things where can they trust them? You know what I mean? It's like when you go through a roller coaster ride like this, is it what's fool's gold, what's real, all of those kind of things are Illini. But fans are fans. When things go well, you get excited. So what's is the trust factor there, or kind of take me through the heartbeat or the pulse of Illini fans right now?
Well, I think the ball went in the basket in the second half. They scored 62 points in the second half, so people are excited about that second half. But, I try to tell fans, be excited about the first half. When the ball wasn't going in, Illinois led Michigan 31-30 at half. So Illinois kind of, if you call it two halves, two games, the first half they grinded out a victory. The second half they played beautiful basketball and won. If they're going to make a run in the NCAA tournament, you hope they make 11 out of 23 threes like they did in the second half. You hope they get red hot. You hope they have one of those magical shooting nights. But you're not going to do that every game. You're going to have to win some. And I think this team showed they can grind a little bit in the first half. They showed they can make shots in the second half. And, that's how you make a run in the tournament. You're not going to be perfect every night or great every night. And that's, what Brad Underwood always says. You got to find ways to win when you're not making shots. And this team, I think, is doing that a little bit better.
Jim, you and I have both talked about being frustrated old Big Ten guys that miss the rivalries and all that kind of stuff. This week, regardless of overall picture and seedings and all that kind of stuff, for Illinois to play rival Iowa and rival Michigan like you're used to, and there's no love lost between either fan base and either program, and to beat them by 20, regardless of everything else, that's Big Ten basketball. And the rivalry between Michigan and Illinois has been extremely heated of late. Now, I know Juwan Howard's not there anymore and all those kind of things, but just rivalry-wise, that had to feel good for the Illini and their fan base.
Well, I mean, to have beaten Michigan now 9 times in a row is just staggering. I mean, it doesn't happen in the Big Ten. You don't beat anybody 9 times in a row. So for Illinois to beat Michigan, to kind of own Michigan, Illinois, if you're an Illinois fan, you probably want to beat Indiana, check, you beat them. You probably want to beat Iowa, check, you beat them. You probably want to beat Michigan, check, you beat them. You probably want to beat Missouri, check, you beat them. Purdue's a little bit of a bugaboo now. Now Purdue, the big Maple kid's gone, but Purdue's kind of had Illinois' number, and there is a little bit of a rivalry between Illinois basketball fans and Purdue, so you get another one of those. But if you're an Illinois fan, you're feeling pretty good about some of the rivalries this year, and 9 in a row over Michigan is just it's hard to figure.
When a team scores 93, it helps as well. And Jim, you look at the box score, and there's 4 or 5 starters that are in double figures, and one of them's not Tommy. And you expect double figures from him, and you're going to get mostly on a night-to-night basis. Good thing from them. To see guys coming back around has to be good. We talked about the roller coaster ride, but at Michigan, you didn't need one guy to go crazy, or it wasn't a Will Riley game or a KJ game. It was an entire team effort, and that's got to bode well going towards the future.
Yeah, I always talk about the 17-2 baseball game where everybody got 2 hits and everybody's feeling good, and it kind of felt like that. It kind of felt like when they got in the locker room, everybody was feeling good. I had a good day. You had a good day. That's how kind of momentum builds a little bit. You mentioned Tommy. Tommy still has 5 assists. You're right. Tommy plays 5 minutes in the second half and they score 62 points. So the fact that they have other guys stepping up is phenomenal. I can't get over, 2 guys. I can't get over Boswell's defense. He's a 6'2", 6'1" guy guarding a 7-footer. He guarded Cooper Flagg the game before. He's just a pest. He's strong. He's just it's incredible what he's doing defensively with his versatility. And then I cannot get over Will Riley, his assists in that game, his playmaking in that game. And when he arrived here, he was a skinny, kind of weak finesse player who kind of looked for his own the whole game. And now he's really making plays for others. He's finishing at the rim. He's put on some weight, put on some muscle. And, his growth has been phenomenal. And I keep talking about this team was pretty good in December. They didn't have Will Riley, really. This team was pretty good in December. They barely had Morez Johnson. Well, if you get to March and you have Riley playing like this, and you have Morez come back, this team, could be dangerous. I still think you got to avoid that 8-9 seed. You got to avoid the Dukes, the Auburns, Houstons of the world in the second round. But there's some reason for hope for sure.
14 of 37 from 3. So they keep shooting it, Jim. They keep chucking it. But when you make double figures, it makes things a lot easier. It kind of goes back to that trust factor. I mean, obviously you can get hot any couple weeks, a Big Ten tournament, an NCAA tournament, and things can go well. Can the Illini 3-point shooting be trusted yet? Or is it still one of those things that you better be able to win if that part of the game's not there on that night?
It's funny because Brad Underwood says that we're too simplistic when we look at the 3-point shooting. I think there's some truth to that. Illinois is like 300th in 3-point shooting, but they're still a very highly efficient offense. And that, Underwood will say that's because they're chasing down the missed 3-point shots, and their offensive rebounding is among the best in the country. And because teams have to come out and guard the 3-point shot, Illinois is one of the best 2-point shooting teams in the country. Now, if you explain it to a third grader is going to say, well, if you're really good at shooting twos and really bad at shooting threes, shouldn't you shoot more twos? But Underwood says the two are kind of go hand in hand. One reason they're so good at twos is because they are forcing defenses to guard him at the three. So, yeah, I go back to, when you buy the ingredients for the casserole, you put them in there. He bought these ingredients to shoot, and you got to keep asking him to shoot. You can't tell him, Rick House, hey, suddenly you're not a shooter, or he loses his value. So I do think they're going to keep shooting threes, and chances are they're going to lose a game, probably a big game, when they don't make a lot of threes. But that's their recipe. Their recipe is to shoot threes, to have nights like that, but to chase down missed rebounds, to open up twos, and we'll see if it works.
Yeah, no, the cooking analogy makes sense. It makes me hungry, but it does make sense. Jim Mattson from down in Peoria, sportscaster in Peoria, joining us right now, talking about the Fighting Illini. And they do get a little bit of a break. They play on a Sunday, and I know I hate the Friday night stuff. I can't only imagine the amount of things on Friday night that you have to cover. I live that life. And then, oh, by the way, it's senior night or whatever in Champaign, and it's a huge rivalry game with Purdue and a team that you just mentioned that's had Illinois' number. But with that being said, they got to play the game. What we talked last time we talked about opportunities, beating Iowa and having two more opportunities. They get a good opportunity at home. I think if you looked at those last two games and said Michigan, Purdue, you get one of them, you're good. Probably the easier one is the home one. We already got the one that was probably the tougher one on the road. Illinois can go into the Big Ten tournament with a 3-game winning streak and distance themselves from, that valley in the season that they had. Right. How important is Friday night? And it should be a great atmosphere and a great opportunity for them to rise in the standings one more time.
Well, I always talk about, the eyeball tests. And, obviously in one of their biggest eyeball test game, the Duke game, Illinois fell flat in their face. And, suddenly people were saying, despite their metrics being good, they might not even make the tournament. Well, there were a lot of eyeballs on them against Michigan. CBS, national TV, they looked really good. I will be covering high school basketball Friday, but there will be a lot of eyeballs on them Friday on national TV. It's another chance for them to pass the eyeball test and to look really, really good. And you're right, it's another chance to add another quad one win. This team has played so many quad one games. I think they have 9 games against teams in the top 15 of the net. Illinois is now 16th in the net. Yeah. It doesn't, that's a 4 seed, 16, right? So I mean, by metrics, Illinois is a 4 or 5. People are still saying 7 or 8. You beat Purdue. I think you got to start looking at 6. Win a game in the Big Ten tournament. But I think their ceiling for a seed can really be helped again by beating Purdue. And the other thing about beating Purdue and Michigan is, the NCAA selection committee does kind of look at your last 10 games. And Illinois' last 10 games were trending very, very poorly after the Duke game. Now, if you say, well, in our last 10 games, you win at Michigan, you beat Purdue, your metrics change a lot again, or at least your resume changes a lot.
Jim, let's talk about that Big Ten tournament because it's back where I think it should be every year in Indianapolis. I think it's fantastic down there. And you and I lived there for when the pandemic was going on. It was Big Ten tournament and NCAA tournament and all those kind of things. And I think it's a great spot for the Big Ten tournament. But I always go back to, and we talked to Kyle Huesmann, an Iowa beat writer, earlier in the show, but I go back to that Iowa team a couple years ago that runs the NCAA or the Big Ten tournament, wins the tournament championship. They get done on a Sunday night after celebrating. They get a 3 seed, and then they get a sleepy Thursday morning game, quick turnaround after playing all those basketball games and lose in Buffalo to Richmond. And I'm not saying we don't even know what the projections are, but how much value do you put in the Big Ten tournament? Because you just mentioned Illinois might be a 7, they may be a 6, they may be a 5. All of that is relevant, but I don't know how much a championship helps that. So I guess long question short, how much value or importance do you put in to the Big Ten tournament?
As a fan, I remember you and Scott Weiss being so happy when Iowa won a few years ago. I mean, I was giddy when Illinois won last year. Yeah. As a fan, it is fun. Steady fall and your team win and your mascot be excited. There's a lot of fun in that. I tend to think one reason why I think Illinois is playing better now is, they have a stretch here where they have one game last week. They play Iowa on Tuesday, Sunday, and then Friday they have more time to rest. And then you're saying, well, go win the Big Ten tournament, win 4 games in 4 days, and maybe play in the NCAA tournament 4 days later. I'm kind of with you. I think that's kind of crazy. Now, I know they're young, but I do think Illinois struggled with kind of the NBA schedule of the Big Ten now, where you're playing 3 games in a week in 2 different time zones. And I think one reason why Illinois has a chance to really get better here is because of rest and because of practice. And so I've always said I'd almost rather lose early in the Big Ten tournament and get the rest. But again, I was giddy when Illinois won last year. You see the excitement of your fan base, and yeah, I don't know. I mean, you're there to get your fan base excited or to get ready for the tournament. I don't know. To me, it's the chicken or the egg. I don't know which way you go on it.
Yeah, and you look at it too, you're beating the teams you want to beat. I mean, when you go down that road, I remember Iowa's, it was like they beat Indiana, they beat Purdue, they beat all these teams. Iowa and Illinois have played in the Big Ten tournament several times. And gosh, we had a good run because I had Illinois win 1 year, maybe 2. How many times have they won recently? I know they won in Indianapolis, probably the pandemic year, didn't they?
The pandemic year they won. Yeah, they won the pandemic year with a limited crowd, a few people there. And then they won, of course, last year. So they won Iowa's final game, and of course that translated to a loss to Loyola in round 2. Last year, winning it translated to Elite 8. So, I don't know if you can put any logic on if you win, you're going to be tired and not go anywhere. If you win, Michigan State's won some and made a long run. So.
No, I completely agree with that. Jim Mattson joining us. A couple more on the Illini. We'll look at the ladies' side of things because probably any moment right now as we speak, they're announcing the women's awards and all conference awards and all those kind of things.
Right.
I don't think Shauna Green's going to be the coach of the year. I think she should be, and probably after the break I can update everybody on if she was. I think she should be. I think for everybody else, probably 7th in the Big Ten isn't as impressive enough as what the USC coach did, UCLA coach. But I think you and I can go coach Juju Watkins and probably win a lot of games. But with that being said, taking all that away, talk to me about the Illini, because we talked about the Iowa women earlier this show and what they have ahead. They get that bye. They don't play till Thursday. They got to wait to see who they play. But they went out to California. They finished up the season, and I think they're ready for a really nice run here coming up in Indianapolis. What do you think?
Yeah, I think Illinois is playing really, really well, and they don't have a lot of depth, and that might get exposed in a Big Ten tournament where you are playing a lot of games in a few days. You worry about their lack of depth more maybe in a tournament than you do in the regular season. But I'm with you. I go both ways in this. I do think to the victors go the spoils, and it's hard to say a 6th or 7th place coach is a Big Ten coach of the year. But when you look at the hand she was dealt, the injuries she was dealt, the competitiveness they played with every night, I can't imagine anybody doing a better coaching job than Shauna. I really can't. I understand voting for the champion, voting for this, USC, UCLA, new to the Big Ten. I understand all that, but she's done a remarkable job. And, they're kind of trending towards an 8 seed in the NCAA tournament. And it's going to be hard to make a run out of that 8 seed when you're turning around and playing the ones, the South Carolinas, the USCs in round 2 or whatever it's going to be. But it's been a remarkable year for Illinois women's basketball, and a year of great growth with crowds, with excitement, with anticipation. That all goes into coaching too. She has rallied the troops. She's got fans out. She's got people excited. And, I know we look at that more centric because we're in Illinois or we're in Iowa, but I think the rest of the Big Ten is taking notice that Illinois is starting to become a women's basketball program. And that's all Shauna. I mean, it was not that way at all when she got there.
You remember you just said they're going to be an 8 seed, which probably 8 or 9 seed in the NCAA tournament.
Yeah.
A few years ago, they weren't even talking about the NCAA tournament.
No.
So that shows what she's done and what she's built, which is great. And heck, Jim, you look at that Big Ten women's tournament. I mean, we were just talking earlier about Iowa. Iowa plays on a Wednesday against Wisconsin. They'll probably have to go Michigan State, Ohio State, UCLA, and USC if the big seats hold and they get all that. But that's a gauntlet just to go through. It's a really, really good conference. And for a team like Iowa or Illinois even to be lower seeds and to have that quality of a team there shows the depth in the Big Ten. So, all right, you got to take the Illinois hat off. You got to put the high school hat on because I love high school sports. There's nobody who knows more about high school sports, especially down in the Peoria and Bloomington Normal area than Jim Mattson. I want to ask you about a couple games. The first one to start with last night. I know you weren't there, but you had the highlights and you saw Sterling and Washington. And Washington's one of the best teams in the entire state, ranked number 1. Sterling didn't get the job done. Washington moves on. But what a good high school basketball game. It goes to overtime. Yeah. Sterling gets their first lead in overtime. Washington holds on. But impressive for both teams. And folks from the Sterling area that are watching this can be really proud of what the Golden Warriors did, not just this entire season, but especially last night as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think there was kind of a thought that Washington was ranked 1, Sterling was ranked 5, but Sterling hadn't really played a lot of teams, and how good were they? And, they went toe-to-toe with Washington, and, I'm sure they probably thinking if we did this or we that, overtime game was a 50-50 game. They nearly beat a Washington team that I think is now 35-1 or 34-1. I mean, they've been phenomenal this year, so yeah, that was great. And those are the kind of games that build a program. Kids see that game and say, because that crowd was into it. It was intense. It was a wonderful, I heard somebody went on Twitter and said it was a wonderful girls basketball game. It was a wonderful basketball game. Forget the girls part. It was a really well-played basketball game. And Sterling played a terrific game. And they should be very proud. It's hard. It's going to be hard, when you're that close. It's hard to watch the action at Redbird CEFCU Arena when you're not quite there and you almost were, but they should be very proud of the effort they gave there.
And people in your area, the Austin young lady, Madison Austin, is heading to, it's either Bradley or Illinois State. I shouldn't have brought it up, but one of the two she's heading to play basketball next year. Sterling standout, so they'll be cheering for her in the next couple months to come. So a big game tonight, Rock Island and Normal Community. Rock Island coming out of a really, in my opinion, and I'm biased, a jam-packed regional, but they're all good. You know that, Jim. I mean, to win a regional championship these days, I feel means a little bit more because I think it's harder to do. And they come out and they beat Pekin, but then they get the winner of UT Moline, and it was Rock Island Moline last Friday night at Wharton Fieldhouse. Yeah. Rock Island wins this. They go take on Normal Community. Another really good basketball game. And when you're talking at this level now, you're trying to play for a trip to the Sweet 16. I mean, that's doing something in the state. Your thoughts on Normal and Rock Island tonight?
Well, Normal's had a great year. Normal graduated all 5 starters. Last year they had the tallest team in the state. They were 6'10", 6'8", 6'9". They were crazy tall. All 5 starters. I guess 4 starters graduated, but they have 5 new starters this year. But they have a big. They have an old-fashioned big, and 6'10", low post player. He's averaging probably 18 and 12 in a good conference, the Big 12 conference, and he's a load. Kobe Walker. I mean, he's a big kid. He's going to Central Michigan. And then they got 4 kids that kind of move around him, but they look for him every single possession. And Rock Island, I know, beat them in December. I think it was like 56-47. Rock Island, I believe, beat Normal Community. But Normal Community hasn't lost much. They went undefeated in the Big 12 Conference. Peoria High still in the state tournament, so they beat some good teams. Peoria Manual still in the state tournament. They'll be over there in Sherrard tonight. So they beat all of those teams. So Normal Community is pretty battle-tested. I know Rock Island's athleticism, their guards, certainly concern Normal Community, but the Normal Community's got a weapon that is very unique. You don't see a lot of 6'10", 260 centers who are very good on their feet and just a really creative player. So in a real half-court slug-it-out game, Normal Community is going to be hard to defend. I think Rock Island's going to try to get, force turnovers and create havoc on the outside. It's going to be a really good game if you get over to Pekin. Pekin's one of my favorite gyms to watch a game in. I know it's a little bit of a drive for the kids from Rock Island, but not quite as much for Normal. But it's a great place to go watch a game, and it should be a really good game tonight.
I want to pick your brain on the Sterling sectional before I let you go, because you mentioned Manuel will be up here for a game tonight. Sherrard takes on Tri-Valley tomorrow night. And for Sherrard fans listening to this, you don't want to put cart ahead of horse, but Manuel is there, and that would be probably, and don't want to put cart ahead of horse against or for Manuel either, but there's that possible showdown. I think everybody kind of puts a check mark or a star by Manuel knowing that they're there. What can Sterling fans or fans that are going to that sectional expect to see from a very good Manual team. I know it's a team that almost beat Rock Island, and Rock Island's a really good big school team. I know they got a young kid going to Bradley, I believe, a big point guard going to Bradley. So kind of let fans know that are listening to this from the Sherrard area what they're going to see from Peoria Manual when they come to town this week.
Well, Manual's interesting. They have played a very difficult schedule. I don't think they've lost to any 2A or 1A teams all year. Their losses have come to 3A and 4A teams, to the Peoria Highs, to the normal communities of the world. They lost to Morton. They lost to some really good teams in our area. But Dietrich Richardson at the beginning of the year was kind of being touted as Mr. Basketball. And if you watch him, he's smooth. He's 6'5", 6'6". He kind of is a point guard. But he's not a big scorer. He has a lot of games where he scores 10, 11 points. Manual tries to speed you up. They try to press you. They have played some good 2A teams. They just won the regional 72-36. They won with trapping. They do things that are a little bit different for 2A teams. They trap. They're crazy athletic at all 5 positions. They're not a great shooting team. Teams have packed zones on them and kept games close a little bit. But Dietrich Richardson's a real special athlete. They're crazy athletic. And they are motivated. They lost last year to Macomb. They were up by 18 points on Macomb in the second half. They blew the lead. They have talked about that Macomb game for 12 months. They play Macomb tonight, ironically, so they get another shot at Macomb. But I think all year they've been like, last year we lost our focus and we lost. I think it's a very focused team. Nothing against Sherrard or Macomb, but I will be very surprised if we don't see Manual in Champaign. I just think that it's very hard for 2A teams to match their type of athleticism.
And you mentioned they lost to Macomb last year. I think they'll probably be ready for Macomb this year. Yeah, I think
they will be, but things happen. Yeah,
absolutely, and it'll be a great environment on Friday if Sherrard can win. They get that home gym against maybe a Peoria Manual, really good team. Of course, I'm putting people ahead when I shouldn't have had already, but it could be a good fun Friday night. Jim, put the nose to the grindstone. I know it's a tough, busy 2 weeks for you, maybe 3. But then after that, you get to golf, and life will be good. Yeah. So, and I know you enjoy the heck out of it. You're one of the best in the business, and we appreciate you doing this. We'll talk to you next week before the Big Ten tournament, if that's okay.
That'd be great, Matt. Great talking to you, man.
All right, Jim Mattson, the legend down in Peoria, the sports director at News 25 down there in Peoria. So we will keep an eye on that high school stuff as well. Great to talk to Jim about the Illini, and we got a great amount of information about that, but high school basketball is so fun this time of year. Well, we got more to get to. You're watching Off the Air on a Tuesday. We'll be right back.
Hello, Dan Pearson here of FCA. Our team is thrilled to support Off the Air with our good friend Matt Randazzo. We share the view of the power of sport when it comes to relationships, including the influence of the coach. FCA believes the coach is the most influential person in America. Matt celebrates local coaches and athletes. His content is informational, insightful, and inspirational. Our Fellowship of Christian Athlete team loves partnering with Off the Air with Matt Randazzo while we engage, equip, and empower coaches and athletes in our 23 counties. FCA, the heart and soul in sports.
View from the West, the podcast covering Illinois high school football.
It's going to be a hard-hitting game. It's going to be great football.
Weekly analysis and reaction from around the western side of the state of Illinois.
This is the game we had circled when the year started.
Follow along on YouTube and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts.
It's big-time football out there tonight, and I know we can play big-time football.
View from the West. We got you covered.
Are you looking for the Quad City's best chips and salsa? There's only one dude to turn to.
Right on.
Snoop. Hand-cut chips, fried fresh with that crunch you've come to love. And the most addicting salsa with delicious fresh ingredients each and every time. Pick up your chips and salsa, queso, enchiladas, and much more at the Stern Center in Rock Island. To place your order, simply call the man himself. It's Snoop at 309-314-8197 and find out for yourself what the rest of the Quad Cities already loves. Welcome back to Off the Air on a Tuesday here in the Quad Cities. Tuesday, May 4th. My goodness. March 4th. It is gloomy and rainy, and I'm just trying to stay awake, fighting a cold, but we have almost done it. We've almost made it through this episode of Off the Air with Matt Randazzo. It's been a lot of fun so far. Hopefully you guys have enjoyed it. Some breaking news over the last 5-10 minutes. We talked about the Big Ten Women's Awards being announced today. Lucy Olson from Iowa, first team All Big Ten. So congratulations to Lucy Olson, of course, the Villanova transfer coming to Iowa City. And I will tell you what, about a month and a half ago, she wasn't a first team All Big Ten performer, struggling a little bit, but really has been fantastic, especially the last month or so of the season. And when her play rose, so too did the Iowa women's basketball team. And they are now getting ready to head to the Big Ten tournament, the NCAA tournament. They got 20 victories on the season, so congratulations to Lucy Olson. Also, on the Iowa side of things, Hannah Stolke was named second team by the media. She was an honorable mention by the coaches. She averaged 13 points and 8 rebounds a game. On the Illinois side of things, the Illini, Kendall Bostic named first team All Big Ten for the ladies as well. I believe that Shauna Green was the Big Ten Coach of the Year. The honor does go to Lindsay Gottlieb. She's the head coach out at USC. And, of course, I kind of said earlier in the show, it's easy when you have that type of talent. But obviously she brought that talent there, and she's done a good job with them. When she started 4 years ago, USC had won 11 games. Now they're one of the best teams in the entire country. So probably a well-deserved award. But you know what? Shauna Green right there as well. And 18 teams in the Big Ten. A lot of great coaches. Curious to see where the voting went, if they even announced that kind of stuff, if she was close or second or third. But Shauna Green doing a fantastic job down in Champaign. Of course, Shauna, a graduate of Clinton High School as well, so a local product. Of course, the Big Ten Player of the Year was Juju Watkins. First time in a long time that a player not by the name of Caitlin Clark has won the award, but Juju Watkins, your Big Ten Player of the Year, and rightfully so. Of course, it's a big afternoon for high school basketball for the girls in Iowa. Coming up at 1:30, it is Central DeWitt taking on Norwalk. And then at 5 o'clock, it's Maquoketa taking on Dallas Center Grimes. If both those teams win 2 games, they could meet in a state championship game. That would be a lot of fun. Great rivalry. One of the best rivalries that I got to cover in my time at WQAD was Central DeWitt and Maquoketa. So best of luck to both the Sabres and the Cardinals. They get started this afternoon in Des Moines. Tough news last night for Davenport North and Pleasant Valley. They both saw their seasons come to an end in Des Moines as well. The Sterling girls, fantastic effort last night. They came up just short against number 1 ranked Washington. They finished the season with 30 victories. Jocelyn James, fantastic job last night. She's just a sophomore. She had 27. They forced overtime. Sterling took their first lead of the game in overtime, but it's Washington surviving by 4. So Sterling's fantastic season comes to an end. There's some games tonight as well. Rock Falls on the boys' side of things, they're in action. Rocky, we talked to Jim Mattson about Rock Island versus Normal. That game is tonight as well. I believe Anawan plays tonight as well. Coming up tomorrow, Sherrard and Princeton in action for sectionals in Illinois as well. So we wish all of those teams the best of luck. Hopefully we can bring ourselves home a state champion in our area somewhere along the line. Boys, girls, all over the area. Also tonight, I should mention, for the boys side of things, Davenport Central and Davenport North, the only 2 MAC teams still remaining. They both have tough road tests, but as Central DeWitt has proved, upsets happen in the month of March, so we wish the Wildcats and the Blue Devils the best of luck as well. Well, coming up on tomorrow's show, I'm really excited. The NFL Combine is done. So we're efforting, and I'm pretty sure we're going to have Scott Docterman from The Athletic on tomorrow's show. Darian Porter, fantastic job at the Combine. Iowa State cornerback from Bettendorf. His stock has risen, I believe, as well. We'll get his thoughts on Darian Porter, the Iowa players as well at the Combine. Caleb Johnson with a 4.56 40 didn't pop off the charts. I don't know how much that affects him. We'll ask Scott Docterman that. We'll talk a lot of NFL draft tomorrow with Scott Docterman. Also hoping to catch up with my good friend Tom Kakert as well on tomorrow's show. So we'll see if we can track down Tommy as well. Also a big announcement. Usually we reserve Mondays for Pat Angerer, but Pat will be back tomorrow for a short period of time because we've got a big announcement that we want to bring to you guys as well. Hopefully everyone can get on board with it as well. So that announcement coming tomorrow. Pat will join me with the details on that as well. So excited about all of that. So a big show coming up tomorrow. Today's show, we want to thank our guests. Marty Marshall hasn't slept, which I think is fantastic. He joined us at the beginning of the show, Central DeWitt, going to state once again. The guys, not just the ladies, but the boys clinched their ticket to state with a victory over Assumption yesterday. Kyle Huesmann from the Hawkeye Report, the good part, looking part of the Hawkeye Report, because Tommy's just so darn ugly. No, I mean that in all love. But Kyle Huesmann talked a lot of Iowa women's basketball. Great to catch up with him. And then Jim Mattson, one of the best in the entire business when it comes to athletics, high school athletics, knows a ton about the Fighting Illini. We talked Illinois basketball with him because it's amazing what a week can do. Illinois goes from, their worst loss in school history, hanging a banner upside down, losing streak, all of that kind of stuff, injuries, flu. Suddenly they knock off Iowa by 20, Michigan by 20, things looking a lot different in Champaign. So if you missed Jim Mattson, go check that out. Also, Jim helped me kind of break down and look ahead to some sectional action when it comes to Rock Island and Normal tonight. Also looked at the Sherrard Regional in general. Of course, Jim down in the Peoria area. Peoria Manual coming up to Sherrard tonight. They'll take on Macomb. Manual, one of the best teams in the entire state. So got his feedback on Manual. So go check that out as well. Yesterday's show, one of the most watched shows we've ever done, which was a lot of fun. Really a good time. Pat Angerer and Gary Dolphin together on the same show. I think it took an hour for us to do the segment, which was great. So go check out Pat and Dolph on yesterday's show. Also, speaking of of Sherrard. Oh, could get in trouble if I say that. Speaking of Sherrard, Ryland Carton put up 45 in their regional championship on Friday. He was on the show yesterday, and we also talked about the big John Cena heel turn with Don Umlin, referee, all-around good guy around the area, a wrestling enthusiast. So a lot of fun on that one. Go check that one out as well. I meant to ask Marty Marshall because I'm pretty sure Don's crew had his game last night. So I meant to ask Marty if Don did a good job. I don't think he'll have any complaints because they won by 21, but hoping to throw some shade on Don, and I completely forgot, but that's okay. So anyways, we want to thank everybody for watching. If you're watching live on YouTube, we appreciate that. Please subscribe. And if you haven't already, do it. And if you have, tell some friends as well. We want to get that thing to 1,000 and then keep going after that. But sitting over 700, which we're really excited about that. If you're watching on X, thank you. We do this each and every day. Last I checked, over 1,000 people had been watching on YouTube, or on X as well. And then if you missed any of this stuff, want to catch up on the shows from the past, last week as well. I had a friend of mine text me yesterday and said, I'm just catching up, and I saw Tyson Blazer on a show last week, and it was awesome. So last week's show is interesting as well. So go check them out. All of them, some of them a little evergreen. We can go back and watch them here and there. So other things we're working on this week, we're trying to track down Joe Wieskamp. Hopefully we'll have him on as well soon. Charles Jugasol coming up. Hopefully this week, maybe beginning of next week. So we're hoping to get Charles on the show here real soon as well, and a lot more other things to get to. So thank you guys for supporting the show. We appreciate it. Thanks for watching today's show, and we'll be back with a brand new episode and a new sponsor as well. Boy, a lot to get to tomorrow. A new sponsor, all a bunch of good stuff. So anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. We will see you back here tomorrow.